All right. Welcome back to painting class. You can see that I have my things ready to go ahead and paint today. I have my sketchbook and my paints. I have water and paper towels. You will need the same thing. Today we are going to be talking about kind of a combination of things. We're going to be talking in part about value, mostly using complementary colors, but we're also going to be talking about creating that illusion of form and particularly brush strokes. So at your table, you have a worksheet that looks like this that we're going to transfer into our sketchbooks so that we can make a painting, thinking particularly about brush strokes in particular. We had talked about this a little bit in terms of acrylic paint, that because acrylic paint leaves marks, I do have to be cautious or conscious of how I'm using my paintbrush. So this today is an activity that's specifically about your paintbrush and how you're using it to create this little image. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take a little piece of transfer paper. I'm going to line that up on my sketchbook page, and then I am also going to put my reference photo here. And I'm going to transfer this so that I have it to paint from. You can see that I do have like painting marks on here, but also there is some indication of where the shadows will be on the image itself. You do also have reference photos of both of these at your table to use. So there's a black and white photo of an apple and a black and white photo of a pear that you will use to reference this. So you can transfer as much or as little of this as you need to. So I'm gonna go ahead and move this to the side so that you can still see it. And you can see that I have transferred where this darker section is. It's also gonna be darker back here and lighter at the front. If you want to, you can use some tape in your sketchbook to kind of tape off a little bit the width. So this is a personal choice if you want to tape it so that it makes a space in your sketchbook. I sort of like doing that. Kind of is nice to just pull the tape off and have the edges be really nice. So like I said, personal preference on your part. I'm going to go ahead and do it. So here is the thing that you have to think about with this. It does not matter to me what color you paint your apple. So you can paint the apple a realistic color that apples come, and admittedly apples come lots of different colors. They can be yellow, they can be green, they can be red. They're green and red together. Like apples naturally happen a lot of different colors. I can also, if I want, make a purple apple. The color choice of the apple doesn't matter. It's that it looks three-dimensional when I'm finished painting. That will matter. Also that I used the sensation of brushstrokes. So you can see we're gonna start in the background. So this is gonna be my number one spot to paint, and I'm going to use brushstrokes and color that kind of mixes together, and I'm going to paint up and down. The second place I'm going to paint is down here on my table, and I'm going to use brushstrokes that go side to side. The third place I'm going to paint is my apple, and when I paint my apple, I'm going to use brushstrokes that go around in a circle, and then that curve along the surface of the apple to kind of reinforce that sensation that the wall is straight and up and down, that the table is flat and goes sideways, and that my apple is a round and voluminous object. The first thing you do have to kind of think about is what color you want your apple to be. If I want a red apple, I should not use red in my background or on my table, because if I paint a red background and a red apple, things get a little lost. So you do have to kind of have a mental picture of what color you want your apple to be before you begin. I think I'm going to paint a red apple, and I do want kind of a grayish color for my background. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and mix some red and green together. So I'm mixing my red and my green together. And then actually what I'm going to do is just move a bunch of that color over here, and I'm going to lighten it up quite a lot actually, so that I have something that's a fairly light kind of grayish brown. I'm not going to fully mix that together in my paintbrush. I do have a little bit of some different colors still in my brush. And what I'm going to do is right back here in the background, I'm going to use those different colors that I still have in my paintbrush, and I'm going to paint straight up and down. And you'll see my color is going to shift a bit as I paint. So I'm going to have some darker sections, I'm going to have some lighter sections, and I'm making sure to leave those going straight up and down here in my sketchbook. And I'm painting kind of right over the edge of the apple actually, and right over the edge of my table. What I want is a nice variety of color in the back. So you can see I got that by having just multiple colors of paint in my paintbrush. And I have now this kind of, I don't know, grayish, brownish color back here now that I'm going to use for my background. I just went ahead and lighten that up just a little bit while the paint is still fresh. So remember to get really light colors of paint. I don't put white in my paint. I actually take white and put my paint into it. So that's an important thing for me to think about. I can still barely see the edge of the apple, which is great. Next, I'm going to paint my table, and I'm going to go back to that dark kind of brownish color that I made originally. And I'm going to paint side to side, kind of lightening that color up as I come forward, leaving those brush strokes in my paint, grabbing a little bit more of this lighter color. So I used that original color that I mixed up to paint my background. So that was a kind of a grayish brown between my green and red. And now the other thing I'm going to do while I'm here is paint my cast shadow. We always want to paint the cast shadow while we're here painting the table, because cast shadows are just table color done darker. So this will work right now for my cast shadow. I might need to make it just a tiny bit darker again. There we go. I did not add black. I actually added just the tiniest bit of purple to make my cast shadow stand out a little bit more on the surface of my table. All right, so I have a vertical wall, I have a horizontal table. Now let's talk about that red apple. I'm gonna go ahead and grab some red paint, and I'm going to mix in that brown that I used for both the wall and my table, and I'm going to use that color first for my shadow. So I need shadow back here at the back of where my stem is, and I'm going to need shadow out and around the edge of my apple. I'm making sure that I have enough paint in my paintbrush so that my apple doesn't feel hairy, but that instead it feels solid. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some more of the red. I also am going to add just the tiniest bit of yellow up here at like the shoulder, or where the apple would be brightest. It brightens up my red without making it pink, which is kind of nice. And I also know that apples are very often kind of a combination of red and yellow, right? It's not an unrealistic expectation for my apple to have that color. This is the darker side of my apple, so I have more shadow there. I'm going to add more yellow into the front again so that I have this kind of golden glow for the apple. Increasing that shadow back here. This is where my stem is going to come out, and I want that to feel like it goes down inside the apple. So made sure to kind of increase that. I'm going to brighten this front section up again, just a little bit with more yellow. And now I'm just gonna do some blending. Notice that when I'm doing my blending, I am dragging my paintbrush in a curved fashion. I want to reinforce for my viewer that kind of visual knowledge that my apple has a rounded surface. And I can, if I want, at the very last minute, I can add a little bit of a highlight. Little highlight. At this point now, I'm cleaning my paintbrush out, and I'm going to squeeze it dry so that I have a clean, dry paintbrush. And I'm just gonna blend or blur this sort of shine section a little bit so that it melts in with some of the goldeny yellow that I have there at the top of my apple. Now, get rid of my light color, and I'm gonna go ahead and mix some more purple into that kind of brownish color that I had originally, because that will make it darker. I'm gonna stand my paintbrush up so that I get a nice thin line for my stem. And then what I also can do is go back to some of this little bit lighter color. So I'm mixing some of the lighter color together and give my stem a little bit of a highlight. And final step is to go ahead and put just a little bit of a cast shadow underneath my apple stem as well. So this is what you are doing today in your sketchbook, is creating a little painting of an apple, making sure that you are thinking about the direction that your brush strokes go, that they're vertical, and that we have mixed paint colors for the wall, that they're horizontal, and that we have mixed paint colors for the table, and that the apple itself has round brush strokes. Have fun experimenting with creating some colors that gives your painting good contrast. And if you have time, you can go ahead and also paint your pear.